Thank you, Abdusalam Jibril. And to discuss the topic, Nigeria's latest inflation figures, matters are rising. Let me introduce in our studio here in Abuja one of our regular guests, Mr. Ni Akinsiju, a financial analyst. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure as always.
Also joining us is another regular face on the program, Yushua Aliu. He's an economic analyst. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Now, we also have with us Dr. Tochukwu Okafor, who's a senior lecturer in economics at Base University here in Abuja. Dr. Okafor, we're glad to have you on the program.
Nice to be here, Kingsley.
Thank you. All right, gentlemen, you are all regulars on Good Morning Nigeria, and the latest figures released by the NBS, those figures are, if you like, the official report of what everyone is feeling and what everyone has been feeling. But how do we contextualize what the NBS is reporting at 22.79% headline inflation? Let's begin with Tochukwu Okafor.
So for starters, I don't want to be a bringer of bad news, but this is not reflecting the actual realities yet. And I say this because when we measure inflation, right, the impact of certain shocks have a lag effect. Right, it doesn't happen immediately. Right, the impact we are seeing is probably the impact of the removal of the Naira redesign. That's what we're feeling now. When we will begin to feel the impact of this fuel subsidy removal and the Naira unification, it's probably going to be in September. Right, that's when we'll start feeling the real impact. Doesn't mean the impact won't come in this coming month, because this was June's report. Right, July's report is going to actually be a little more green than what you're saying. If you noticed, the increment was tepid. I mean, from 2.5, I think we're on 22.79. That is not the real impact. The real impact of this fuel subsidy should push us probably above 1%. So we might be seeing 23.8 by next month, guaranteed. That's the impact, when the impact will start reflecting on market realities, because transport costs, we still have some goods that are still in the market that came in earlier than when they unified the Naira from 400 to 700. So probably by next month, upper month, we'll begin to see these realities reflect. But I think the major problem we are going to be facing is with regards food inflation via transport costs. And I think that's because of the new increment from 530 something to 617. And as much as I feel for the average man, everybody is in it to make profit. And if you look at how the oil sector is arranged, they are not being taxed. So if you look at how the Naira is moving, it's 800 and they are not being taxed, and they don't put VAT on this cost. So increasing it to 600 is more or less them saying they are even doing us a favor, because across our African peers, I think we are the least. I think across Africa we have between 875 to 968 across African countries based on this shock alone. But Nigeria is still doing 617, basically because they are not being taxed. So if there was tax involvement and they were reflecting the economic realities of the exchange rate, we should have been seeing 700 to 800. And the risk behind this floating exchange rate with regards to this fuel prices is that if it continues to, the last time we spoke about speculation, if people continue to speculate and hoard dollars and this thing mistakenly touches 1,000 to 1,002, we are going to be seeing the prices of fuel inching towards 900, just the way we've seen bread. I mean, there was a time we discussed and I said that if inflation reaches 23, 24, we'll be seeing bread around 1,000, 1,002. We're already there. So the chances are, the problem now is if this speculation continues and they continue hoarding the dollars, because foreign exchange at the official market, people are not seeing dollars, they are seeing it at the parallel market. So if it mistakenly touches 1,000, we are going to be seeing fuel.
How much is it now at the parallel?
I think at the parallel market it was between 825 to 796 as at yesterday evening trading closing session. So it traded between 780 something to 330. But I think the benchmark was 830, sorry. I think the benchmark now ended at 796, but at the end of the day, majority was sold at 825. So if we look, and today it inches up to 850 by mistake, we might be seeing dollar hitting 800 at the benchmark rate. So when we see this kind of things happening and we are seeing that fuel prices are 6 something, the oil companies also need to make money, right? I'm not in support of it. I know that it's hurtful, but the reality is a it is what it is at this point in time. So the only way out of this at this point in time is just to weather the storm, right? Weather the storm. There are a lot of policies we'll discuss, but I don't want to take much of the time.
Okay, weather the storm. Lee, let's have your overview on that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, like Doc said, it is what it is. We are here now. There's a consensus around the trigger policies, as it were, that had created this reality for us. It's a reality that we thought we could dodge, over time, but the new administration had courageously taken it up by removing fuel subsidies, specifically harmonizing the foreign exchange windows. And anybody who reviewed those policies will know that this is where we are going to find ourselves, because these are pulled down. The policies were holding the economy, as it were, before now. The subsidized fuel consumption in Nigeria created an economy of its own. People were having access to fuel at reduced rates, at artificial rates, at non-economic rates. And therefore, you actually have an artificial economic space, up till recently. It is now that we start talking about a truly market-driven economy. Though there's still also that aspect of managed float, as it were. If we are seeing rates at the BDC, the parallel market, going up, it's still a reflection of that managed float, because up to 43 items could not access. And it also would translate to the fact that those 43, those who were engaged or who trade in those 43 assets would, because they could not access the official market, would of course divert to the parallel market. And but for me, I don't want to go on to analyze what that cost us. It is what we want to do going forward, and the FAC allocation that will be shared, the June FAC allocation that will be shared in July, up to 1.959 trillion, is indicative of what would likely continue, to be experienced going forward. You now have an historical high FAC allocation to be shared. Well, if you also transmit that into dollar rates, it may not be as high, but we deal in naira as a currency. So it's an historical high in terms of liquidity. It means that you have more money going to the federal, states, and local governments. And of course, it will also be about time that Nigerians will stop looking just exclusively at the federal government. Now, the state governments of nationals will have more money, in their pockets. The local government will have more money in their pockets, and therefore, you will expect that more impactful policies and infrastructure will be delivered at that level, of course, to reduce the impact of inflation. I am impressed by what the government has done at the level of declaring food as a security issue, for the consideration of the National Security Council. And I think the proactive medium to long-term measures would, to a large extent, if it's properly, calibrated and managed, would impact food price, because food price is actually the elephant in the house, in the room, as it were. If you have food price at 25.25% in June, and food constitutes the larger percentage of expenditure in the household, in the average Nigerian household, up to between 52 and 57% in some cases. It means that when you hold 10,000, more than 5,500 naira is spent on food alone. Now, you are not talking about other kind of expenses, education, health, and etc. So there should be a consideration for, strategically engaging in increasing food production, and of course reducing, first increase the earnings, because when you have at 22.79, it means that the money in the pocket of the average Nigerian, let's say you have 10,000 naira, that your money is reduced by more than 4,000 naira. the value compared to what it was this time last year. So there should be that consideration for increasing earnings, as it were. So now going forward.
Okay, before we go forward, we'll pause you. We'll pause you. You shall. Let's get you to weigh in here on what the new numbers from the NBS represent for us and what we should be thinking about.
NBS has been doing a very good job in trying to show certain surveys conducted over a period of time, and that is helping policymakers to listen and to also watch carefully. 22.79 is too high for an economy that has a very stagnant income growth, and also that is being associated with a lot of economic loss. Economic loss in terms of goods that are produced within the economy. Check the food inflation, which is 25.25%. So when you look at that, you have to also manage to look at the capacity of that same economy. You look also at the population of that economy. Sometimes in planning and in looking at these figures, you have to look at the multiplier effect, especially as it attached to the consumer confidence and the purchasing power of individuals. These are very significant when you are targeting a growth rate for a given period of time. So that aside, there is also other factors which obviously we have to look into. These figures are coming at a time when the president has declared state of emergency. That state of emergency is just to encourage every citizen to understand there is a problem at hand. This problem, how do we solve this problem at hand? Is it the responsibility of the government or responsibility of private bodies or individuals? Households are always victims of certain figures that are coming out from the statistic board because it has to do with livelihood.
How is that?
Because it is a range that always qualifies you for your own social well-being. And when you are looking at it like identified by NTA, when you see that income is being reduced, you have an income probably of 30,000 naira, now it is reduced, the purchasing power, that same, looking year on year, just year on year consideration, you realize if you can have bundles of goods with 20,000 naira, now you have to times it by 100% to get those. And where is the income? So the stagnation of the income is one fundamental aspect to which consumers always suffer in that economy. And when food security is also mentioned, I have said it times that number, we don't look carefully at supply bottlenecks. Supply bottleneck does not mean just to convey good produce from point A to the next point, but what is the requirement of that same economy? We don't look at that. And sometimes if you don't look at the requirement of the consumer groupings, who are those in that economy that are looking for eggs? And what is the supply of egg to that economy for the younger generation? What is the supply of cassava for a social group or a consumer group in that economy? So I think it goes beyond sharing of fertilizer or sharing of what and what, but what is going to be the lasting solution to this problem? All these palliatives that are coming in and intervention that government is bringing, we have wasted 8 years without working refinery. And that is why we are still singing the same song. And if we cannot graduate from that level, the broad actions, the broad policies, the decision of those in power should be that what do we need for the economy? If we need a refinery, put a refinery. Because whatever palliative you are giving, if you times the number of income group that have graduated to poverty club of over 133 million, you cannot treat part and leave the rest. That is the implication. Sometimes I used to assume, are we still talking about voters? Are we still talking about citizens? If we are putting 500 billion to alleviate who and who in the economy, so you cannot select. They are all victims in the economy. 133 million people. How do you help them? Regulate. You have to establish price stability. So far that price is not stable, you continue to have inconsistencies in any planning method.
Well, Yusuf, thanks. Was it yesterday or the day before? Yeah, it was yesterday when we're reviewing the latest increase in pump price of petrol. It said, the NNPCL said market reality, therefore market forces. And I said, market forces are like a wild horse. And in the policy ecosystem, you have contestations of those who will say, leave market forces alone. There are others who will say, look, we have to provide the reins to get it controlled. But before Tochukwu comes in, I know each gentleman, each of you, you've made your establishment comments. But me, Tochukwu has given us something like a forewarned, but it's also a dire warning to say that it will be perhaps in September, if not later in the year, that we'll begin to see the full consequences manifesting in the numbers to be released by NBS with regard to inflationary pressures on account of the two major policies, removal of fuel subsidy and the measure of the multiple windows of the exchange rate. If that is so, what do you think can be done in the interim to mitigate the harshness of the outcomes of those realities?
Done in the interim. But anyway, just let me ride on that, on this position. Actually, there had been a huge contestation over the figures released. The thinking is that the figure does not actually capture the reality of the June figure, as it were, the June inflation rate. But NBS came out quickly to clarify that the impact will not reflect in this 22.79 figure because their survey stops in the second week of June. So it means that you still have another 2 weeks in June, outstanding, and by the time you had the 2 weeks in July, in the next figure, we'll see an exponential increase, as it were. Now and then going forward, the scare really is that we suffer from what I call a trilemma. Perhaps if there's something to also describe a multiple case of dilemma, perhaps it will be more. Because when an economy suffers from increasing inflation rates, increasing liquidity rates, increasing employment rates, and so on and so forth, it becomes difficult to even know the kind of policy measure, to drive it. We talked about 1.959 that will be distributed by FAC now. That talks to increased liquidity rates. Already, we have our M1, broad money, is up to 66 trillion naira, high liquidity. And that is why, because by the time we start triangulating it too, it gives you that environment of burdensomeness. That is why interest rate on yield on fixed income instrument, for instance, Nigerian treasury bills, the Nigerian federal government bonds and all that, are not also impressively high, because they are under inflation rate, and that is why foreign investors are not actually coming in, because, as it were, we suffer from what you call net negative real interest rate. The yield on our bonds and our other instruments are lower, than the inflation rate. Now we expect, because of the harmonization of the exchange rate, the idea is now that you have a now that you have a market-driven exchange rate, foreign investors will come in. But foreign investors are also now saying that the yield that will impress us, that will motivate us to bring our dollar, is not equitable for the purpose of our dollar, so they are holding back. And therefore, our exchange rate is also now diminishing. 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have said this. 2 weeks ago, I was hopeful that we have this harmonization, and therefore it will be a natural trigger for inflow, for dollar inflow. So specifically talking about how do we marshal policies to engage, it has to, one, this immediacy of palliative and all that they are talking about, I don't know. I don't know. I really don't, because my fear is to build another bureaucracy around palliative. And in doing that, you increase the burden, on the system itself and on the people. Perhaps we need to start mobilizing Nigerians to understand where we are. And that this thing would be a medium to long-term thing. There is no immediate solution as it is. So we see our reality. There's no immediate solution to it. If we have 8,000, 10,000 naira going to vulnerables and all that, vulnerable households and all that, yes, what it does is just to keep a number of households from perhaps circling into the extreme poverty community, but it still does not impact the economy as it were. Because if that kind of money is not driving the GDP, for instance, it is still not going to, the GDP is supposed to drive the economy in a way that the poor would circle out. It will trickle down. The impact of the GDP will trickle down. So perhaps the need is to start telling people that what we need now is to enhance our productive capacity across all segments of our economy, at the level of agriculture, at the level of manufacturing, etc., etc. Removal of levies on vehicles of certain kind. For instance, vehicles that are used for transportation, reduce duties and levies, so that people who have money, we don't need to use federal government money to start importing vehicles for transportation. Motivate and incentivize rich people, wealthy people, entrepreneurs to see opportunities in bringing in vehicles at reduced duties, at reduced levies. If you do from the average 70% that it is, if we do 15% as it were, is enough motivation and incentivization. I can tell you that there are dormant capital as it is now that can be channeled into that. So there are things that can be done to motivate the private sector. I want us to avoid a situation where we build a bureaucracy around this palliative thing. We have been doing it before. It has not been effective, And if we are earning so much, if we are saving so much, channel those savings into the normal budgetary fiscal system. Let us see increased allocation going into education, going into health, going into infrastructure and all that.
So that as some said, as part of the monies going into those sectors, outcomes will be a reduced burden on the citizens.
On the citizens.
And then an elevation of the ease of living.
And of course,
ease of doing business.
And it will reflect in businesses, because now inventory is growing high in the manufacturing sectors. People are not buying. So even if you are producing, who is buying? So it's also going to impact on the bottom line of manufacturers. It means that they will not expand business, and they have not expanding their product capacity. They are not employing. So it's a cyclical thing. And what we need to avoid is to have government come into the fray. My advice, is
less government.
Less government.
Okay, Niyi, thanks. Tochukwu, let's come back to you. As part of what needs to be done, you guys have put, as always, a number of very brilliant suggestions or ideas on the table. But I'm just wondering, money getting into the hands of the 3 tiers of government on the stabilization account, as you said, a historical high, nearly 2 trillion naira that they will be sharing.
But does it really go to the 3 tiers of government?
Well, let's say 2 tiers.
Yeah, 2 tiers.
And the stabilization account.
Yes.
You also have to have some savings in there. I raised this point sometime in the past, and I said, part of what would like to see as an indication of a sea change in attitude and behavior, and therefore part of the ways of catalyzing whatever ideas we have. We always complain in the meantime about post-harvest losses. I don't know whether there's any indication of investment in rural infrastructure upgrade. To say, as this money is coming to us, all right, we are placing orders for earth-moving machines. When you place an order for a bulldozer, for a grader, or for a steamroller, you don't need to replace those things if properly maintained in the next decade.
A tractor too.
So, in your opinion, Tochukwu, economists, again, you argue that inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. So if this money comes in now and then they hit the market, as they used to be the case in the early part of this republic, whenever FAC was allocated, you go to Bureau de Change and the freight price would have gone up. How do we manage this money that has come? Obviously, you know, from part of the savings from subsidy.
Okay, so just before I start,
Yes.
come to that, I'd like to juxtapose three concepts that they mentioned. You know, that's the transport sector, right? The food, and also the exchange rate, right? We all know that everything boils down to transportation, right? It's transport costs that elevate all the prices we know. Now, I was discussing earlier with Mr. Ni outside that the problem with this government is the opacity and information symmetry between them and the public, and that's what drives that wedge and trust deficit between the government and the public. As at day before yesterday at Ogun State, to be specific, right, I think there is a program right now that is going on for transport scheme for Indians came in to do a transport scheme where they are converting most mass transit buses and buses or vehicles that will be transporting agricultural products to gas. And the project is ongoing. But the problem is the public don't know about this. And when the public don't know about this, they don't even know what to invest in and what to expect. So there's a panic, right? There are lots of incentives that are going on, right? When the money comes in, like you said, before it even depreciates, most of them are involved in certain projects that are making sense. Theoretical as they may seem, but actually make sense. Like this one, converting most of the cars that are used for mass transit to gas. At the basic level, it eases transport cost at the barest minimum, immediate cost, right? This is one of the ways that they can actually alleviate poverty with regards to the food section, because if they can get transport costs, and this thing I'm not talking about, it's not about 2 months or 3 months, we're talking minimum of 8 months, right? Nothing can be done in the first 3 months, we need to accept that, right? But if something can be done within the first 8 months, and at least these vehicles are being pushed out. Two things: employment, we're going to get employment. Second, we're going to get transport costs reduced. Once you've reduced transport costs, half the challenge is already solved. Because the major problem of inflation we're having, like I said, I want to juxtapose, is both transportation costs and the fact that we have excess money outside the system with regards, in comparison with that with the CBN. So monetary policy is out of it at this point, right? While the monetary policy and fiscal are supposed to come together and collude, right? Monetary policy right now is not going to work, because if you're doing interest rates, right, 18.5, 19, whatever you touch there is investors you're looking at. The households you're going to be looking at are their daily lives, because everybody now is actually saving to save themselves. This dollar that we're seeing that is scarce, let's come to economic realities. People are hoarding dollars because the economy is so nasty. So their own form of savings now, for the rainy days, I gather dollars, I keep it, speculate, and watch the market. There's going to be scarcity. Because like you rightfully said, there's no investment bringing in the dollars for us again. But what people are doing is mopping up the minimum dollar that we have, which happened with Naira, which is why we're seeing inflation, mopping up the minimum dollar and holding and watching the market go until it hits 1,000. So the concept is...
Do you think it can hit 1,000?
Yes, very, very possible. At this rate, if nothing, palliatives can only... To be honest with you, palliatives can't even reach everybody. Let's just say it as it is. There are certain people, they've said they have watched people with NIN, BVN. How many people, poor people, have bank accounts? How many people, there are people in this country that still walk naked in some communities, I won't call the state, that I have seen that still walk naked. They are not, when you enter there, your network goes off. They cannot be accounted for. I wouldn't call names, but yet they are there. How do you account for those people? And the truth about it is there are people that are funding these people. There are people that are funding them. So the truth is there is still money, there are leakages everywhere. So if we have had leakages with our normal account and the dollar. We'll keep seeing that's where my juxtaposing comes in now. We are seeing exchange rate rise because people are speculating. And as exchange rate rises, definitely fuel prices are going to keep rising. When fuel prices keep rising, we're going to see transport costs keep rising. And when transport costs keep rising, trust me, once you've touched transportation, you've touched everything inflation, trust me. So the truth about it is, at this point, I think it's time we start telling ourselves the truth, that we have to start navigating towards CNG in the short term, for now. And then subsequently, when the refineries come, like Mr. Ushua said, we can start seeing some balance. And subsequently, if by December truly they go back to the Naira redesign, I personally feel that the Naira redesign had a specific benefit to it. If you notice, between December and February, dollar was steady. Dollar was between 760, 750. It started appreciating, as a matter of fact. Yeah. So if we can go back to that and do it the right way, sensitize people, educate them on how it's supposed to work, we're going to bring financial inclusion, dollar will be stable, probably the refineries will be working by that time. Then CNGs will be putting buses to carry people with gas, which is at a reduced cost. These things have to work. They sound theoretical, but they're achievable. Because if we're dashing people 8,000, do that and put it in one investment, you gain employment first, and then you reduce transport costs, and then educate them on why that money shouldn't be given to them but to this, so that they get to know where to apply to get jobs. These things are very simple. But the truth is, you see that trust deficit. As long as that trust deficit between the government and the general public continues to increase, there is nothing they will say that would entice the people. Because I heard, just quickly, I heard today over the radio. No, the radio. Okay. Someone opened his mouth and said the reason why fuel hit 16 or 17 is because of Russia-Ukraine war. I mean, what the hell? I mean, you can't come and see those kind of things and expect people to take you seriously. Do you understand? Get the facts straight, enlighten them on what the realities are. Don't hide it, and then you begin to see growth subsequently.
Okay. Yes. Sorry, sure. Tochukwu, thanks a lot for your explanation. Is it a question of deficit, or, as you earlier said, information asymmetry?
Is it mixed?
Yeah, rather than a deficit. You would expect that an administration, on the one hand, you said, look, fuel subsidy is gone, applauded in several quarters. So where will the distrust come in terms of trust deficit? I imagine it's information asymmetry to say there are things, there are ideas out there that we can begin to latch onto that we need to take advantage of.
I think the problem is the only time we get actually information symmetry is when it's the big things that don't concern the poor. You need to understand it's the masses here that run this economy. It's not just the government. It's the people you're working for. The things you're telling them is fuel subsidy removal. That's big. It's beyond their pay grade. The things they need to know are things they have access to, things they can invest in, things they can walk into. So when you start giving information symmetry to even the little things, the things that are still in the pipelines, you see people that are ready and willing to work with you. You just need to trust them. The US, for instance, there's this alt-air program that they're working on right now. I know about it, and I'm not even a citizen of their country. But the citizens are willing to sacrifice for that purpose because they know the next big thing is alternate energy, right? There are a lot of schemes that are going on in California, I think in Texas. We know about it. How come ours, in our own country, in a crisis period, we don't know about it? So you get where I'm coming from with that.
Yeah, you sure?
You sure? Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Jume says take this, but I would like you to drill further. And I know we're getting pressed for time. You were talking about supply bottlenecks and the appropriate mapping of consumer groupings so that there could be targeted policies that can help get us out of the current inflationary pressure. So supply bottlenecks, how do we address that, identify and address them, and then the consumer groupings, how do we map them?
When you check the geographical location of this nation, you realize that a large number of people are living in IDP camps. They are displaced from their communities. They are farmers. They cannot go to farms. How can supply be achieved? It's not going to be there. That is one. Two, when you check flooding, it's taking away farmlands. It's taking away our roads. How can you achieve the target supplies in the market? Above all, when you check also the indices of those who are in the farming group and how efficient are they in that same farming group. Now, coming back to unification of the exchange rate, you see, if I am to advise Bola Ahmed Tinubu, yes, he came on 29th of May with a very hope that he wants all of us to be together in that same hope. Subsidy is gone. we quite agree. But certain economic decisions require time and require also wisdom to understand the possibilities of certain economic policies. The same time you are removing subsidy, the same time you are issuing license, the same time you are harmonizing the exchange rate. And how do you sustain price stability in the market? Because the window at which the stability is to be achieved is now open up in the short run. And we have said it, there is going to be a lot of imbalances because the window of exporters and importers is closed. And since it is closed, they have to now rush. And there is also one fundamental aspect about that supply bottleneck. That is, all the time when we are speaking on laissez-faire, that demand and supply, sometimes we don't look at the cost implication attached to different variables involved. Let me give you an instance. Supply and demand. The entire PMS market is full of supply and there is no demand and price did not fall.
And the heavens did not fall either.
So what are you not telling me about market forces? You see, fundamentally, we have to understand that President Tinubu, there is need for you to have an economic team. There is need to have a policy design. But each has its own time. It's like an agricultural season. There is a time to plant yam. There is a time to plant cassava.
Yes.
So the same thing, economic policies. And sometimes also inflation. This inflation is like a medical doctor has when confronted with an operation of a patient and the patient has BP, he has to suspend. You cannot operate an individual.
So the country has BP now.
The inflation is the BP for the inflation. So you have to understand.
Yes.
No. What you stabilize the BP.
Yes, stabilize the
because
BP.
you always have BP.
Yes,
exactly.
Whether it
That
is
is what
high
we are
or
looking
low.
for.
So on that
You
note,
stabilize,
gentlemen,
yes.
thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. Yusua Alu, he's an economic analyst. Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Dr. Tochukwu Okafor, senior lecturer at Bayes University and an economic analyst.
Thank you so much.
Always
Thank
a pleasure
you,
to have you. And Mr. Ni Akinsiju, a financial analyst. Thank you so much.
A pleasure as always. Thank you so
coming.
much.
All right, so that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. It's been a very interesting day. We've had dual conversations on the program. Join us again tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning for a fresh edition of the program. Look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadalo.
And I'm Juma Yusuf. Do stay safe.